This year has gone by really, really quickly. And it's been just a year of changes for me. So yeah, let's take a look at this year in review. Welcome to the Ponderings of Pete. I am Pete, and I'm a booktuber that talks about books. I talk about sci-fi, I talk about fantasy, primarily fantasy. And every once in a while I slip in some nonfiction as well, a little bit more rarely. This is the year in review tag. This was created by Dominish Books. Definitely a newer guy on the scene. I don't know if you can call him a newer guy on the scene. I think he's been around for like 6 months. How long does that last? Who knows? He created this tag, and I actually wasn't tagged in it, but I'm going to do it anyways because I was trying to think about some year-end videos that I could do in December, and all of them were ones that I wanted to wait until January to do because I wanted to actually finish out the year to talk about them. So when I came across this tag, I saw a few people doing it, and I was like, I'm gonna do this one. Since December, end of the year, people want to talk about end of the year stuff. This is his original tag. I've seen it a few times, and I think it's really dope. Go check out his channel down below, and yeah, let's get into it. First one, your favorite book of the year. And this one's a bit of a toss-up because I've read some really, really good books this year. And this is really between two of the biggest series that I read, which were the Long Price Quartet and Malazan, Book of the Fallen. My favorite one in Malazan was Reaper's Gale, and then the favorite in LPQ was An Autumn War. So this is kind of a toss-up between the two, because both of these series were written really, really well, and I highly enjoyed both of them. And the endings were amazing. So definitely check out both of these books, both of these series, because they're so good. I know Reaper's Gale isn't much of a favorite for a lot of people in the Malazan fandom, but it is for me. And then for LPQ, just like, guys, go read it. I don't know. I keep talking about this, and I don't know if you haven't. If you're watching this channel and you haven't read Long Price Quartet, do it. You're not going to regret it, I promise. Well, there's a small percentage chance that you might, but because not everybody has my taste. Not everybody is identical to me, because that would be sad and annoying. But yeah, go read both of those if you can. They're great. They touch on some great subjects. Long Price Quartet specifically is definitely, it's only four books, so a little bit easier to get into. Number 2, what is the favorite series that you've started this year? So there's a bunch of series like Malazan, Long Price Quartet that, because they're not finished, they're disqualified from this question because the next question actually addresses those. So top series I started but did not finish would probably be Fred, the Vampire Accountant. I'm an accountant, so it's a story about an accountant that turns into a vampire. And it is so wholesome, so great. I'm not exactly Fred. I've met people like Fred, but it is comforting to have a book full of accounting jokes and vampire jokes and all this other jazz all combined together because it's so cool. So yeah, I'm still in the middle of that. I think I have about 3 books left in the series before I catch up to where the author has written them. He hasn't finished the series yet. It's an ongoing series, but they're all really good. Kind of a short story formatted story. So there's like in each book there's like 3 or 4 short stories with chapters in them, kind of novellas that all happen sequentially, kind of building off of each other. Great for found family, great for just general enjoyment. It's a comfort read for me. The answer to this question also could have been DUNE, but I think with DUNE, because this year I am going as far as I'm going to, I'm stopping after God Emperor. I think I'm going to count that as a finished series since I've finished how far I'm going to go with that for now. Going on to the next question that relates to that. What is your favorite series you finished this year? And that, again, is a toss-up. We have DUNE, we have Malazan, we have the Long Price Quartet. DUNE and Malazan are both intensely philosophical, although I notice it more for DUNE than I do for Malazan, mostly because the topics of DUNE are something that I've been thinking about a lot. Malazan is so deep. Both DUNE and Malazan, I know there's a lot of things that I'm not getting on the first read-through, so I look forward to reading both of them again. Long Price Quartet I also will be rereading again. I don't know when, though, but it's just so beautiful. I would definitely say it's a toss-up between these 3. just because the philosophical side of Dune is just really makes me think. Just like how leadership and governance is conducted and why we lead, what is the purpose of government and stuff like that, and different themes of prescience, seeing through the future, like why, like what would you do in that thought process if you were able to do that. And then LPQ, just almost in a similar vein, there's definitely some musings on the purpose of a leader, as well as the prices leaders have to pay because of leadership. It's beautiful. In general, just the prices people have to pay because of their actions. Long Price Quartet is a very human book. And then Malazan as well has a lot of those elements, because a lot of it is, this is definitely hard to see when you're on like book 1 or whatever. Like it all builds, and it's definitely a non-traditional fantasy because it doesn't build like normal fantasies. And there's so many books. There's like 400 point of view characters in the entire 10-book series, which is wild. I didn't even realize there were that many when I first read it. It's just an epic series that goes into some really interesting topics, refutations of the great man theory, as well as just compassion and the importance of it in every situation. So that's really interesting to see in a fantasy book, and I love it. Next up, favorite new author for you discovered this year. So Malazan and DUNE are out of it. So you can guess who it is. Daniel Abraham, author of the Long Price Quartet. Definitely my favorite author I've discovered this year. I'm looking forward to reading more of him. It's so good. Such a good series, and he has more books that I'm going to be reading. Starting next month, I'm going to tackle The Dragon's Path, which is going to be dope. I'm looking forward to reading more of his writing. You could say I kind of discovered him last year because I kind of read The Expanse last year in 2020, but I really wouldn't count that because that's just discovering The Expanse, not necessarily Daniel Abraham himself. Favorite new character of the year. This is hard. I definitely loved Ota, but I would have to give this to Fred from Fred the Vampire Account, because he's just cool, and he's great, and he loves his friends, found family, and he's an accountant. Like, you don't see that many accountants. The runner-ups, I would definitely put Basso from The Folding Knife here. Basso is such an interesting character. It was a little bit hard for me to sympathize with him. If we're being honest, I actually liked his nephew a little bit better, who was also called Basso, but Bassano. So those were two really, really good characters. Bassano was a bit of a spoiled, kind of spoiled, but like not bratty, noble woman's son. And just seeing Basso do what he does with the economy of his country and the luck that this man has, where he does these selfish things that end up benefiting the economy. Such an interesting exploration in that book. I really liked it. So that was by KJ Parker, so he's another new one that kind of was in the running for Daniel Abraham, but because I finished the Long Price Quartet and it was so beautiful, Abraham took the cake for sure. Favorite new release of the year. Next, I would definitely have to say Leviathan Falls. Leviathan Falls was the last book in the Expanse series, 9-book series, finishing up, and I think it finished it up really well. It definitely wasn't as explosive as I thought it would be, but that's okay. I enjoyed it anyways, and I feel like that the ending that it had was fitting, and I liked it. It met the stakes that were set in book 8 and resolved them very, very well. So it was a good ending to the series. Some of my favorite characters, like Holden. Holden has become a favorite character because of book 9. I have to say that in the series, because I think the evolution of Holden's character from self-righteous man that is almost kind of like naive in how he thinks about the world into who we see him in Leviathan Falls is such a fascinating journey. And I really liked how they ended up with him, especially because it just, they explored PTSD a little bit in this book, which was really nice. Just because, it's Daniel Abraham. It's about the humanity. It's about, people that are reacting to these events and how they're dealing with this stuff. That's kind of what I love about Abraham, because he really focuses on the characters. Number 7, what was your favorite reread of the year? My favorite reread was definitely Red Rising. I think that was probably the only reread I did this year, but it still was my favorite. Just that series. I read Red Rising, Golden Sun, and Morning Star again, and it was great. Great series. And then I got through Dark Age, which was mind-blowing. Looking forward to book 6 coming out soon, hopefully, soonish, but we'll see when that happens. I know Pierce Brown is working on it, and some people are saying maybe he'll get it finished by next year. So we might get like an early 2023 release, maybe. I don't know. Hopefully soon. Number 8, what was your biggest surprise of the year? This one's easy. I had a few, actually, but I think the biggest surprise was Firekeeper's Daughter. This randomly came up. Some of my friends on Gregory LaPerch's Discord were reading it, and they're like, hey, you should come read it. And it sounded intriguing. It was touted as Native American, kind of a drug smuggling mystery, where a young woman in a Native American tribe on the border of Canada and Michigan gets involved with the FBI and ferreting out a drug smuggling ring, which was really cool, really interesting, and definitely had some heartbreaking moments, and I loved it. Really big surprise, and just I learned a lot, definitely, about Native American culture. From what I know, the book was written by, someone who comes from that culture, and I always like learning about this sort of thing, so this was exciting to read. Next up, what was my biggest disappointment of the year? I don't like this question, but because there's only really one book that fits this criteria, in my opinion. There could be more, but it's Nightmare. I don't like hating on this book because I know I don't know. I feel like it's unearned because I'm just not a horror person. I was disappointed in this book because I didn't like it. But that's also because I don't like horror, and I was trying it, and it was okay. I was like, So, take that with a grain of salt. I didn't like it because I didn't like horror. That's all. So this becomes the brunt of, what did you not like this year? I'm like, what is this? Everything else is kind of mostly great. Maybe you could say Dragons of Spring Dawning, but I definitely think this was more of a disappointment. It was maybe no. Okay. And then finally, 10, one book that you would recommend to anyone. I think generically I would say Long Price Quartet, obviously, because that was one of my favorites of this year. Malazan I wouldn't necessarily recommend to everybody because it is intimidating, it is big, I know not everybody's going to enjoy that. It's wild, crazy, amazing. I wish everybody would like it, but I also know that not everybody will. So, LPQ is definitely something I would like to recommend to everybody. I'm still getting the hang of okay, when do I not recommend books to people? Because that's actually an interesting thing, because I can recommend books to people all day long. But knowing what they won't like is actually an interesting thought process. Just because I've definitely been in a bubble with my book tastes for a very, very long time. So figuring out, okay, other people like other books? What? It's an interesting process that I have very little knowledge of. The last one, of course, is tag people. And I'm just going to do a general, hey, if you haven't done this tag, do it. I'm tagging you now because it's coming up into the really end of the year. So if you don't have this on your schedule to film, you should do it. It's dope. You should do it just, so we can see what's your year in review. What's what you've been reading, what you've been loving. So thank you so much for watching. Have a great night. You're awesome. And remember to get some rest because that's important.